panel, what teaching experience or student did you have this year that totally reassured you that jazz is in good hands for the future? Here he goes.
Just trying to stay awake. There is I'm at the early hour, it's no reflection on you. There's a young drummer by the name of Sammy Miller in Los Angeles, and he won the LA Jazz Society Young Talent Shelley Mann Award a few years ago. And it's very rare that you see someone who has to eat, sleep, breathe this music, and everything revolves around what they have to do in a day to get better. You know, how much you eat, when you eat. It's like being on the road. Ray said, you're going to be fine if you get 6 hours of sleep every night and one good meal a day. Go by those rules and you'll be fine on the road. And that's kind of, everything backs up from the gig. So the gig's at 7 o'clock, you don't want to eat at 6 because you're going to go in the bandstand full. So you got to plan your nap time and how much sleep you get. All of it is based on the gig. That's the priority of the day. Then you back up from that. So in learning as a student, I found that I did that without realizing it, that my time at the drum set was the priority of learning what I wanted to learn that day, or play the records, or transcribe soloists. And this kid is doing the same thing, and it's so rewarding to see a young man who has that drive and dedication and discipline, and is a great kid. He's smart. I mean, it's the perfect. It's like watching Gerald Clayton show up. You know, I told John Clayton, I said, you know, if I'd known that if I had kids, which I don't, but if I had kids and they were going to turn out like your two kids, I would have had 20 of them, because they're just perfect human beings. And Sammy is the same kind of character. So he's now studying with Matt Wilson in New York, and is going to the Manhattan School of Music. And that reassures you that he has 4 Monty Alexander CDs right now that he can't get, so I gave them to him so he could transcribe the arrangements. You know, that's one of his goals, is to play with Monty Alexander. So it is reassuring, but I have to say they're fewer and far between. When I first started teaching, there would be 5 people like that you'd be teaching out of 30 who were headstrong and they had to do it no matter what. Now there's about 1 every 2 years that you will find. But I don't teach regularly anymore, so part of that is me by not making myself available for the students that do have that. But it is reassuring to see someone. And then there's a young piano player who was a Shelley Berg student at the University of Miami in Florida, just graduated, and he moved to Los Angeles. He won the James Morrison Scholarship in Australia. James hired him on the spot. He was James' piano player in Australia. Then he went to study in the States, studied 4 years at the University of Miami. John Clayton and I were guests there. I didn't hear him play at the school at all. He didn't make a jazz ensemble. He wasn't good enough to be in a jazz ensemble. So afterwards, we were at the donors reception, much like we had last night, and the piano player was playing Oscar Peterson's composition, Kelly's Blues. And I'm standing with my back, because I walked in the door and people nail you as soon as you walk in the door, so I still had my coat on, and I'm hearing Kelly's Blues behind me. And I turn around and there's this kid playing an electric piano, because they didn't have a real piano for the reception. And he looked up at me kind of scared, and I said, "You're not the only one that knows that song, you know." And he looked up and grinned, and I winked at him, and I said, "Talk to me after you get finished with this set." And he came up and he talked to me. He moved to Los Angeles in May. I told you about him. His name is Conrad Hedzinski. I still can't get the last name out. But he's one of those guys too, that just eats, sleeps, and breathes, and it really does give you hope that this music continues through the hands and the ears of these people.
Let's see. Well, as far as education goes, you know, my mother was a teacher, and by growing up and hearing her come home every night telling me stories about education, the last thing I wanted to do was to ever teach. I never wanted to. You know, I just, at night after night at the table, you couldn't even eat your food. So it wasn't until I was doing the Cosby Show, and doing the Cosby Show, Mr. Cosby would come up to me every day, and he'd always ask me about teaching. You know, do you teach? And I said, no, I don't teach. And he says, well, that's a shame. And he said, why don't you teach? And we talk about it. And so the next week, we tape another series, and he would come up and say, do you teach? And I said, no, Mr. Cosby, I don't teach. Well, doing the show, Tim Warfield, my best friend, we would take the camera guys out to dinner, buy them nice meals, nice drinks, so that they can get close to the band, and if we could get our face in the picture, then we could so we were doing the show, and the camera started to get close, and the camera guy would look around and wink at us, and we'd move over, and we'd both get the shot. So one day Mr. Cosby said, "So, what do you think about teaching?" I said, "I don't want to teach. Why? Why do you keep asking?" He goes, "Well, what do you think about me paying you all this money for sticking your head in the camera shot?" I said, "Whoa." So I said, "I'd love to start teaching." And I started asking him a bunch of questions, and I said, "So, okay, I'm going to start to teach, Mr. Cosby." I said, "But how do you measure success as a teacher? You know, because it's so intangible in a way." And he goes, "You know, the day that you can sit and play with one of your students and make the music that you enjoy making is the day that you may be doing your job as a teacher." And just this past spring at Temple University, where I direct the program, we did a CD, and it's called "To Thad with Love," and it's something I've always wanted to do, to have great composers and arrangers write music with Thad on their mind, coming from their pens, but not exactly what Thad would write. And that happened. And on this recording, in the middle of this recording session, I realized when I was playing one of the songs with him that I was actually, Branford Marcellus was standing next to me, and Branford was not only playing with my students, but I had the opportunity to play, and it was like one of those moments that you get super emotional. You start looking around, it's like, wow. And they're making this music, and it was a great, great educational moment. And after we made the recording, we would all talk about it, we could sit back and laugh, and then just to see the CD now, and it's come out, and to talk to the students about it, it's a really, really touching moment. So.
My moment last year was in a very unexpected place. I was adjudicating big bands in Fresno.
Okay, Holly, you're up.
And there was a little 8th grade drummer. It must be because the drums are easy to play.
They are.
But this little guy was he listened to every band there that day. He was, this little guy, he couldn't even carry the ride cymbal in. I mean, he was like, his mother had to, put the ride cymbals up for him because he wasn't even as tall as the ride cymbals.
Smart.
He's already got the roadie thing going on. And, I was like, it's an 8th grade band. You kind of adjust your ears for what that is, or what it could be, or what it often is. But you really try to be open about it. And, it's like, oh, this little guy, he's so tiny. You just want to pinch his cheeks. And
Think we do this for the money?
But this kid commanded the band. He drove the bus. He didn't have a piece of music on the music stand. He was watching not just the director, but the entire band. Whoever was soloing, he had his eyes on the soloist. He was aware on the bandstand. And I talked to him. I wasn't supposed to work with the band, but I did pull him aside. And he had a whole list of drummers. I said, "Who's your favorite drummer?" And he just went through a huge list of, just jazz history. And does you kind of like doing this, huh? Yeah. Keep it up. So that to me was like one of those really exciting moments where you just go, wow.
My student is a current student. I'm 5'2", and I can look down on her. She's 4, I think she said 4'10". She's Japanese, well, she's from Japan, and she lives in Los Angeles now, and she drives a car with 3 cushions under her from Los Angeles to San Diego, and if you've ever done that drive, that's a commitment. She comes either 2 times a month, or whatever my schedule is, 2 times a month or once a month for a lesson from USC. She has a language barrier still because she hasn't been in the country that long. She studied classical music in Vienna after she left Japan. And when she showed up for her first lesson, she said, I've listened to all the jazz flute players that are recorded, and I've picked you to study with, which, you know, I felt good. And I said, well, what? She said, I just left Vienna, and I want to start playing jazz. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. So she said, but here are all your solos from the first 4 records. I wanted you to check them to make sure I transcribed them properly. So I put on one of the CDs. It was actually the one we were just talking about. Take note and listen to her play My Ship, note for note, that she had learned because she hadn't been able to have a teacher in jazz, so she didn't know what. She didn't really know how to do it except to copy it. And a lot of the Japanese musicians are wonderful at copying the American artists, but it isn't a music that a lot of times is in here. And the other day I was teaching her, and Mike came out of the back of the house and he said, who was just playing? And I said, it was Rumi. He said, oh, okay. So she's crawling up my back as we speak and getting ready to record, and she's the real deal. She can't communicate real well in English yet, but she's taking English classes, and she's studying. The only thing USC will let her do is take music classes. And the commitment is unbelievable. And here's this little thing that she'll be here. She'll probably be doing my job in another 5 years. Major, now she's not copying anymore. You can hear that it went in here. And she's a wonderful human being too. So
how old is she?
She's a little older. She's about 25, but she started jazz when she came from Vienna. So I mean, it's like she's starting like a child, and it's unbelievable. And to be able to transcribe all those solos, I can't transcribe my own solos. So it's amazing. It's in good hands. I mean, as you said, it's less and less. You don't find a world of players out there, and we don't have IAJE anymore, International Association of Jazz Educators. We have JEN, which Terell is involved in heavily, the new kind of IAJE experience. But when you used to go to those conventions and hear, 20 student bands that were really playing the music, you were reminded a lot more that it's probably is in good hands. Okay, so
one thing to add to that, or really quick, about Terell. Terell, as he said, was the director of the program at Temple University, and he was kind enough to invite my trio there to be in residence. And where this education starts from is from the mentors that we all talked about that got us into this in the beginning, and then the support of the people along the way that will guide the students through this. And Terell has such a great program at Temple. I felt everybody in the trio, we talked about it for days afterwards, because everybody made us feel so welcome. They were into everything we did. They asked questions. As soon as the session was over, I had 6 drummers coming up to me saying, can we take you down the street and buy you a sandwich at the deli? And they just pelted me with questions the whole time. And that's the interest that you look for in wanting to share this information that we have, that you don't want to share with everybody if they're just going to run and put it online somewhere as part of their blog. It's their idea. But somebody who really takes the information seriously and then turns it into them being a great musician is what is the rewarding part of this. And it's rewarding for you as a listener to get to hear these people go through the transition of learning all of this valuable information from the masters who have started playing this music. So we all have to do this together, and Terell does such a great job. He wasn't even there, and he did a great job. He made reservations for Christoph and I at a restaurant, and had them make what I like when I get in. So, you know, that's why. Actually, I don't remember any of the students.